Welcome back to the talkSPORT MMA YouTube channel. My name's Kwaku Afari. Before we get started, can you make sure you're liking, commenting, and most importantly, subscribing to our brand new talkSPORT MMA YouTube channel? We really appreciate the support, and make sure you hit the bell notification button so you never miss an upload. I am delighted to be joined by a man who featured on not only UFC 100, but UFC 200 and is set to feature on UFC 300 this Saturday. The one, the only, a UFC legend, Jim Miller. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining me, man. Want to start off on obviously UFC 300. Is it true that our colleague at talkSPORT, Adam Catterall, was having the interview with Dana White? He floated the idea of you featuring on 300 because you did fight on 100 and 200. Did the call from the UFC come after that conversation between Adam and Dana?
No, the call came after my fight. Gabriel Benitez. I hadn't fought since June of last year. And I wanted to fight by the end of the year, and so I was begging Sean Shelby. I was like, get me in there. I don't want to wait. It would have been a 10-month layoff. I'm like, I don't want to wait till 300. And just the way things worked out, the fight didn't happen until January. And I did catch a little flack for risking it from some people, on the internet. But I wanted to fight. And I knew that I'd be able to turn around in 3 months and be here at UFC 300. So, after that fight, a couple of days later, I got the call from Sean Shelby and Dana and Hunter and them. And they're like, all right, 300, let's go.
Love it. And yeah, there's no point in waiting. The hallmark of your career is activity. And in your last 6 fights, you're 5-1. So it makes sense for you to want to get back in there as soon as possible. You're a man that's seen it all in the UFC. Like I said, you fought on 100 and 200. Can you compare the difference in the build-up to this fight card in comparison to 100 and 200, please?
100 it was 15 years ago. It's kind of hard to sometimes remember that stuff, especially that's like I wasn't even a father at that point, so like my world kind of revolves around my 4 kids too. So, I remember it being huge. I would say that this week there's obviously a good fan presence, and I think that the presence would probably be even bigger if it was like International Fight Week, like the last like 100 and 200 were. I think just contractual obligations and stuff like that with ESPN and stuff kind of force the UFC to have it here in April. But there's I think the media side and all that, it's very similar. There's definitely I do get recognized more often now. Other than that, it's honestly, I just feel like it's fight week. For me, it's all the same. I started my weight cut, later today, and weigh in tomorrow, and then it's time to get rewarded and get to fight on Saturday. So, it's awesome that this event is finally here, and I reached this goal, and my point of view on this event has changed. When I first mentioned it years ago, I wanted to fight on 300. It was more so to like drag myself to the finish line and retire. But like I said, I'm 5-1 in my last 6, 5 finishes, and I'm performing, and I'm feeling great in training. So, I'm not getting off the train right now. Like we're gonna keep going, and maybe throw some more goals out there and try to obtain those as well.
UFC 400, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know about that. We'll see. I would be like 47, 48 years old. So, maybe I'll be behind a microphone at that point. But we'll figure it out. I'd love to be a part of it.
And you mentioned the finish line and extending the finish line. Where is that finish line? Where do you see yourself, or when do you see yourself retiring?
I'm taking it fight by fight, really, and it's not even necessarily the fights, right? Fight day, fight night. it can bang you up. It's expected, right? But it's one day. The hard part is preparing for the fights. And if I get to a point where, some of the nagging injuries and stuff like that that I have, if they're just rearing their heads and it makes it too hard for me to show up on fight night to the standards that I require of myself, then I know it'll be time to hang them up. I have said it in a couple of interviews leading up to this one. I don't want to fight any more than 50 times in the UFC, which it makes me laugh just saying that, right? But I think that'd be an awesome, mark to hit. If I get to fight at the pace that I want, if my body can keep up with it, we're looking at maybe 2 years, So I feel like I've got that in me, and as long as I can keep those training camps going the way that they've been going, and if I can keep performances going the way they're going, then yeah, I'll be able to make that. But really, it's kind of just been a fight by fight at this point, and I think that's the way it needs to be.
In 2 years' time, that'll take you to 42. I think that's more than enough time in the octagon. You could go and spend some time with your family. You have faced some absolute legends in your time in the UFC. Legends like Cowboy Cerrone multiple times, Nate Diaz, Charles Oliveira, obviously a different stage of his career, Dustin Poirier at a different stage of his career. Who would you say is the toughest opponent that you faced in that octagon?
They're all tough. It's that's a really hard thing to kind of narrow down. Like there have been tough fights, but to do what we do, and a lot of those names that you mentioned, these guys have over 20 fights in the UFC, and you are you're a tank. If you can get to 20 fights, 24 fights in the octagon, it's really kind of insane. The Dustin in our fight was, the fact that he was still able to stand up at the end of it, it definitely shows his not only physical but mental toughness. There was some injuries to his calf and stuff like that to the point where they wanted to lance him open when he got to the hospital afterwards, and he was able to finish the fight. And but like I said, the toughness, it goes for so many different things, and you can define it in so many different ways. So yeah, there's been a lot of those guys that are super tough and super talented, and I've got a ton of respect for that I've had the opportunity to fight.
And looking ahead to Saturday night, you take on Bobby Green. He's vowed to close the curtains on your career on Saturday. What do you make of that?
You know what? He's allowed to say whatever he wants to say. I'm the type that I've never let any of that stuff bother me, and even to the point where that's kind of why I don't really say anything about my opponents, because I know from my point of view, none of that matters. Some fighters are the types to get emotional. They are the types that those words can get in. But I don't know. I'm just not smart enough, I guess, to let the words bother me. He's a tough dude. He's been around for a long time. He's a very interesting style. I've wanted this fight for a long time, and we've tried in the past, and unfortunately things have come up. But I think it's a great fight, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to making him eat his words too. It's kind of the fun part too. So it's a fun fight, and I can't wait to leave my mark on this amazing event.
And you mentioned that you wanted this fight against Bobby Green for a long time. You're 5-1 in your last 6 fights. Who, if you get past Bobby on Saturday, would you like to fight next?
I'm not really the type that looks past, right? It's it's tough for me. I think it's kind of silly calling out somebody that already has a fight lined up,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who has anything, and honestly, I'm not keeping a running list. So A win over Bobby gets me back into the rankings, and there's a lot of very interesting fights. There's a couple rematches, and there's some fights against some other really tough and dangerous lightweights out there that I'd really enjoy having.
And in terms of yourself and Bobby Green, when you meet in the octagon on Saturday night, how do you get the job done against Bobby?
I get the job done against Bobby like I get it done against everybody else. I make it my kind of fight. Get in his face, make it super physical, and push him to get into those scrambles, and that's where I feel like I'm going to have my opportunities to end the fight. It's everybody's got those strengths, right? Your own strengths, and I know that I can't let him dictate the pace. I can't let him dictate the fight style. I have to do that. So it's really go out there, put the pressure on him, and be aggressive from bell to bell.
And I couldn't nail you in terms of picking the toughest opponent you fought, even though you did say that the Dustin fight was one of the most impressive in terms of the way he carried on fighting after the damage you inflicted. But can I nail you down on the Mount Rushmore? You're a man who's seen it all.
Oh.
You've done it all. Can you give me your top 4 fighters of all time? It doesn't matter what weight division.
GSP, Anderson. I got to go with John Jones has to be on there. And I mean, for me personally, I think that Fedor on there as well. All those guys were super amazing runs. It's really tough because there's so many fighters from the previous eras that had an impact on me and really are the legends of the sport to me and built it and inspired me to get into the sport. So I wish there was more than 4 spots.
And in terms of your career, you've done it all, you've seen it all, like I mentioned. Is there anybody that you didn't share the octagon with that you would have loved to have fought?
I always wanted to fight GSP. He just an amazing tactician, right? While his and I, our fight styles aren't super similar, just the way that he would go into a fight and look to beat his opponent in one area, and that's all that he was going to do. One position, one spot, and he would get the fight there, and he would dominate there with the game plan. And I always wondered, like, what that would be, with me. And I know it's a super difficult fight, right? But it always really intrigued me.
And on GSP, towards the back end of his career, when he was going on that run, he was criticized quite often for his fights being maybe a little bit boring. He wasn't getting as many finishes as he was in the early part of his career. You're in the entertainment business, but also you're in the winning business. Do you pay any attention to that side of it in terms of trying to entertain the crowd versus trying to get the win?
I understand it. As a training partner and a coach and a peer, I tell people to win, right? Win within the rule sets. Get your hand raised. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just get your hand raised. When I'm in the octagon, I know that doesn't keep me happy. That's not the fight style that I want to fight. And I know that there's probably definitely a handful of fights over the years that if I had fought a little more conservatively, and fought more positionally, I probably would have won. I come from a wrestling and a control-based jiu-jitsu style. My black belt is under Jamie Cruz, and he is a Henzo black belt and known for his top pressure and all that stuff. And I've got that in me, and I switch it on, when I need to. But my goal, the only way to be happy about a performance and about a win is to finish my opponent. So I am always looking for that finish, and that's kind of how I racked up all the submission attempts, I've a couple of fights where I got, like 5 or 6 submission attempts, and those are losses because I was still looking for that finish, still trying to, sneak it out, sneak in there and grab something and put somebody away, as opposed to, minimizing damage and going to more control. So I knew at this point, 43 fights in the UFC, like I know what my legacy is, and it kind of be silly at this point to change anything. So that's the goal, was to go out and to fight to make myself happy and to make myself satisfied with the performance, and that's hunting that finish, and it's pretty much at all costs.
And I'm excited to see you do that on Saturday night. Before I let you go, Jim, apart from your fight on the card on Saturday, what other fights are you really looking forward to watching?
I'm really intrigued by the Gaethje Holloway fight. I'm super interested to see how Max does at lightweight and does against a guy like Gaethje. Gaethje's a power puncher and kicker, and Max is a phenomenal boxer, and I'm interested to see how Max deals with the kicks and how Gaethje weathers the boxing.
And how do you think that fight goes?
I'm leaning towards Gaethje. I'm a huge Max Holloway fan though, so I would love to see him win. But just as a fan, I'm super interested in that fight.
And the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, quickly, who do you think wins that one?
Pereira is one of those guys that I watch him hit pads, I watch him spar, I watch him fight, and I'm always like, how does he get away with this stuff? Like his hands are in his pockets, but he's got that just scary power. In a 25-minute fight, I think he does connect at some point. And I'm going with him. But yeah, he's just got that it factor, and it's crazy, watching him go out there and just starch dudes.
Well, Jim, you mentioned that you're most excited to watch the BMF fight. You're BMF in yourself. You've given us some incredible moments in the octagon. I'm wishing you luck on Saturday night. Good luck, mate. And fingers crossed you get the result that you want.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Guys, if you enjoyed that interview, make sure that you're liking, you're commenting, you're subscribing to the talkSPORT MMA YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell notification button as well so you never miss an upload. And we'll be back with more content in the lead up to UFC 300 very, very soon.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.